So you guys made a lot of decisions when you sat down today. Either you sat a few feet from the next closest person, a few seats away, so you didn't have to talk to them, or you sat next to your friends, so you could enjoy talking to them. Or you were forced to sit next to someone you don't know at all, a total stranger. And that's by far the scariest option. What if they smell bad? Or what if they chew their gum loudly? Or worse, what if they actually try to talk to you? We've become terrified of talking to each other. You can be elbow to elbow, inches from each other on a crowded bus, and it's socially acceptable, socially preferable to stare off into space, or to be zoned in on your smartphone, trying to beat the next level of Candy Crush. And I get it, everyone needs their personal space sometimes. I need mine as well. But when we don't communicate, when we don't talk to each other, we're left to rely on what people look like, on what we know about them, and hear about them to form our opinion of them. And stereotypes arise. And right now, we're in an environment where stereotypes flourish. In high school, you know them. There's the nerd, the jocks, the popular kids, the skaters. And these stereotypes become so well known that people dress up as them for Halloween. Hollywood makes movies poking fun at them. And they can be funny. But stereotypes can also become dangerous very, very quickly. When we stereotype entire groups of people, prejudice arises. In just the most unfortunate recent example, in 2012, an unarmed 17-year-old high schooler by the name of Trayvon Martin was shot and killed by a neighborhood watch member in Florida. And many said that he was stereotyped, that he was profiled as dangerous and scary because he was a young black male wearing a hoodie. And the hoodie became a symbol of the movement for his justice. And these negative effects of stereotypes happen in communities all over the world. And they happen where I live, in San Francisco. There's one neighborhood in particular. It's called Bayview. And Bayview is tucked into an isolated corner of southeast San Francisco. So not many people have a reason to go there. They only see what they might hear on the news. And they only know what they see in headlines. And so I'm going to share some of these headlines with you, some of what they might hear on the news. Man grazed by bullet in SF Bayview shooting. Victim shot in Bayview attack. Man critically wounded in Bayview drive-by shooting. 3 arrested for Sunday morning Bayview killing. So what you now know of Bayview is what most people know of Bayview. It's what the writer Chimamanda Adichie calls a single story. And she says the single story leads to stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. So if you hear over and over and over again that there's a shooting in Bayview, soon you're going to think all that happens in Bayview are shootings. And there is crime that happens there, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But there's other things that happen too, positive things. So how do we start hearing some of these positive stories? How do we hear the rest of the story and not just the negative? So that's what I do. I'm an artist, and I use creativity to build community. I create ways to get strangers talking to each other. I create shared spaces and shared experiences where people can come together and build connections between each other and between communities. And I think a big part of why I do this work is that throughout my life, in different times, in different places, I've grown up around different varieties of people. And I've been able to see that not everybody lives the same. People come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different lifestyles. And I've been able to talk to those people and hear their stories. And I want to help other people hear those stories as well. Now, I grew up in a place that was full of strangers, about 3 million of them in Los Angeles. And I was extremely lucky. I went to a very diverse high school. And it was in a very wealthy neighborhood, but kids from all over the school, all over the city were bussed in, myself included. So I got to hang out with kids from different neighborhoods, different backgrounds, different income levels. And I realized that, these kids, their stories are just like mine, and their stories are unique. And I got to make friends with them. And I enjoyed that. And in my first job, I was a bellman at a really fancy hotel up in Portland, Oregon. And I got exposed to similar, different varieties of people. And as a bellman, it's your job to talk to people. You have to. You're supposed to provide a good guest experience. And so I got to talk to people and hear their stories from all over. And I realized that their stories are unique and powerful and not often reflected at all in the way they dress or the type of car they drive. And then I moved to San Francisco. Then I decided that, I really liked talking to people of different backgrounds, different cultures. I liked talking to strangers. And so I decided I wanted to give myself more excuses to talk to strangers, just like when I was a bellman. So I quit, and I traveled a lot, including walking from Los Angeles to New Mexico. Yes, walking, 2 feet. And I walked through small, struggling towns in Southwest America. And I was able, again, to hear their stories, to realize that these people are unique. And their stories are often much more powerful than people that live in different big cities and think that that's all that exists. Out in the middle of the desert, they might just seem like a little blip, but their stories are very powerful as well. And then I moved to San Francisco a couple years ago. And I was working at the mayor's office of civic innovation. And I got to work with youth in that same Bayview neighborhood. And they went out in the neighborhood and they talked to people and they asked them what they wanted to improve. And they heard about gang violence, unemployment, drug use, all challenges that Bayview faces. But they finally came back to us and they said, what we really want to change is the perception of Bayview. And I found that to be extremely powerful. They had this huge platform in the mayor's office to try to end gang violence forever in their neighborhood. And they said, no, really we want people not to look at us and assume that we're poor and dangerous because we live in Bayview. We want to be able to tell some of the positive stories. And so I thought, how can I help them tell some of these positive stories? Now I knew we had to get them talking somehow. We had to help people hear those stories. But unfortunately, in this day and age, we barely even talk to our neighbor that lives right next door to us, much less a total stranger that lives in a perceived scary part of town. So I thought, what if you didn't have to talk to them face to face? What if you could just write them a little note? It's the same thing when you have a crush on someone, right? You write them a little note. Check if you like me, check if you don't. Right? It's the same idea. It's a simple, light touch way to put yourself out there. And I thought, these little notes, they could also include prompts to help people tell the story of their community. And so that was the beginning of the SF Postcard Project. And the project began in April of 2013. And I've been doing it for about 8 months now. Sent out about 350 postcards. And the project seeks to foster connection through storytelling exchange. So people fill out a postcard with a personal positive story of a marginalized neighborhood, a neighborhood that maybe has a negative reputation, doesn't get sort of a fair share in the news. And then that postcard is mailed out to a random person in the same city. So they get a surprise piece of mail telling them about a neighborhood they've only heard or seen one side of before. And so I began the project in Bayview, the same neighborhood I was working in. And I went to a neighbors group meetup in Bayview, and I got 15 postcards from people, and they wrote about places that they loved in their neighborhood, their favorite places. And I knew I wanted these to go out to random people. I want people who had never seen Bayview, who had never even heard of Bayview, to want to go there, to want to check it out. And so I got these postcards, and I literally just went through the phone book, picked out random addresses, slapped a stamp on the postcards, and mailed them out. And just 3 days later, I received an email from a couple of young women in San Francisco's Mission District. And they wrote to me and they said, hey, we received this postcard from LaShawn Walker. And the postcard says, my favorite place in Bayview is Candlestick Point because it's a lovely park with amazing views. And they said, we received this postcard and we'd love to meet LaShawn. And I was like, wow, this actually works. One of the first 15 postcards I had sent out, and I'd received a response. So I had LaShawn's email, And I sent her an email, and I sent the girls an email as well. We all connected, and we met up for dinner. That's LaShawn in the middle and the girls on the side. And I had no idea what to expect at all. But what followed for the next couple of hours was an energetic, a real conversation about community, about our lives, about the project. And at one point, the girls and LaShawn realized that they had all just read the same book just a few weeks ago about a clash of culture. And it was a perfectly fitting moment. This is the whole point of the project. Give people from different communities the opportunity to come together, and they realize that they're much more similar than they are different. So now I've expanded the project since I started it. I've done it in about 4 other neighborhoods in San Francisco, including the Tenderloin. And the Tenderloin neighborhood faces a lot of similar issues to Bayview: crime, homelessness, drug use. And to do the project, I usually set up a small table. I partner with either a local organization or an event. And I set up a table, I put the postcards out, and then I simply ask people walking by if they want to share a positive story about their neighborhood. And I've sent out about 350 so far. I want to share some of my favorites with you guys. So this comes from Eric, who lists his address as in transition. Eric says, "I love the Tenderloin because like the Tenderloin, I've been stable. And through no fault of my own, I've been cast in a bad light. But like this neighborhood, I have a good, strong heart and will climb back into the light." This comes from Emily. She says, "I love the Tenderloin because I was walking around at about 2 a.m. after a show at the Mezzanine with a few friends. And a lovely homeless man walked alongside us, and we all started snapping and singing Otis Redding's Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay. Smiles all around." Aaron writes, "I love the Tenderloin because it's a place where everyone walks, and people talk and interact with each other. People aren't absorbed into their devices as much. People say, 'Hi.' People say, 'Look at that pretty girl.' It's scary if you aren't used to it. But after time, it becomes home, and other places seem sterile and cold and plastic." This person simply writes, "I love the Tenderloin because there's a beautiful girl on a scooter, beautiful and strong. So sometimes they're simple and lighthearted." Lawrence writes, "I love the Tenderloin because the people, they're struggling, living on the streets. I admire their ability to persevere, living such a difficult and precarious life. People talk about stability and security. Most of these people don't know what tomorrow will bring. In many ways, they are more alive." And this comes from Adrian, who says, "I love Bayview because the people believe in me when no one else will." And I've learned a lot in the 8 months I've been doing this project. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is that everyone has a story, regardless of who they are. And telling that personal narrative is extremely powerful, especially for low-income neighborhoods. People rarely ever get asked, "What do you love about your neighborhood?" And I've learned that people really do want to connect. They just don't know how sometimes. And sometimes a simple postcard can help them do that. I've learned that people really just enjoy getting a piece of mail that's not a bill. Think about the last time you got a letter or a postcard in the mail. It's fun, right? And I've learned that other people want to do this as well. So I've heard from as far away as Sydney, Australia, and as nearby as Oakland, that people want to do the project in their community. So what began as the SF Postcard Project is now the Neighborhood Postcard Project, working to share positive stories, not just in San Francisco, but all over the world. And I'm helping them do that. I'm creating a simple toolkit, a guide, some files people can download to help them start the projects in their community. And they are. It's happened in New York, in Washington, D.C., in Florida. Soon it's going to happen in Connecticut, and hopefully all over the world. And imagine that, a world where we don't rely on what we hear on the news or stereotypes to form our opinion of other people, but on personal experiences and stories. Ronald Reagan said, "A lot of the troubles in this world would disappear if we were talking to each other instead of about each other." And I have something that can help us do that. It's not much. It's just a simple postcard. But a simple postcard can build community. A simple postcard can break down social barriers and stereotypes. So the next time you hear something negative about a neighborhood, take a step back. Think about it for a second. Find out for yourself. Visit, eat at a restaurant there. Talk to the people that live there. And chances are that you hear these negative things over and over, but figuring out for yourself and finding out for yourself is going to make you a much richer person. Once you see that people live differently, once you see that there's different backgrounds, different cultures, different lifestyles, you become a much richer person. And you don't have to leave your own city to travel. So talk to a stranger. See what happens. Chances are it'll make their day, and it'll make your day too. Thank you, guys.